The Gigabyte GSmart Guru is a phone from a brand you've actually heard of, yet coming for a very affordable price, while offering almost top-shelf specs and a very sleek and sturdy design. Not a bad combination, is it? Unlike most Gigabyte devices we've seen recently, the Guru skips the dual SIM functionality and only supports one SIM card. Dual SIM phones are popular in emerging markets where people switch between cards to save on their monthly bills, and the lack of dual SIM here signals to the fact that this targets a slightly different audience. With a 5-inch 1080 by 1920 pixel display, a quad-core chip, it's a MediaTek one, but still, and a 13-megapixel rear camera. The GSmart Guru ticks all boxes for premium phone on paper, but does the well-rounded spec sheet translate into an actually good real-world experience? Let's find out. In the box: wall charger, USB cable, in-ear headphones, user manual. Quad-core processors can be very different, but most devices released in 2013 feature either a Qualcomm Snapdragon or a MediaTek chip. Qualcomm is a name we usually associate with top-shelf devices, while MediaTek used to denote a slower but cheaper processor, but the difference between the two has gone smaller with time. The GSmart Guru uses a MediaTek chip of that new kind that approaches Snapdragon chips closer than before. It's the quad-core Cortex-A7-based MT6589T, with the T standing for turbo, paired with 2 GB of RAM. This chip indeed is an overclocked modification of the wildly popular MT6589 quad-core chip. Still, in daily use, there is a bit of an occasional stutter just navigating around the menus, and it is noticeable, but it's not terrible. Each core on the Guru can run at up to 1.5 GHz. Now this might seem a bit too low compared to current cream of the crop 2.3 GHz processor smartphones with chips like the Snapdragon 800, but we would not count on clock speed alone to understand the performance of a chip. That same 2.3 GHz on Qualcomm's chip, for instance, throttles down to 1.2 GHz in just a minute in most games, so it indicates a peak rather than the regular processor running speed. In reality, the MT6589T behaves itself just differently than the Snapdragon chip. In contrast, the MediaTek chip in the GSmart Guru tends to run for much longer periods of time at its absolute peak 1.5 GHz frequency under heavy loads, with much less variance. The GSmart Guru is not a bad device for gaming, as it easily runs casual games and can run even more intense games like Asphalt 8 and Modern Combat 4, but it is out of the league of the top performers. It features a PowerVRS GX 544 graphical chip running at up to 357 MHz, and it's a GPU that starts to struggle when it has to push all the pixels in a 1080p display like the one in the Guru. The slowdown is especially noticeable in 3D games where newer graphics chips can easily score triple the performance. It's worth mentioning that, quite admirably, Gigabyte does not cheat on the benchmarks like others, Samsung, LG, HTC, and the scores you see below happen with no artificial boost of clock speeds. Internal storage comes in at the very generous 32 GB, but that greater out-of-the-box allowance has translated into a lack of microSD card. It's a trade-off we are willing to make for Gigabyte to achieve the slim profile and sleek design of the Guru, but it's a limitation worth noting. Out of the 32 gigs, around 27 GB are available to the end user.